Thank you. More of who we are. Just in case you never hear another thing today, I just want to remind you of who we are. We are too far from the...
We just want to see the face.
Okay. Who we are. There is a power in the universe that created everything and everyone. That very power experiences life in, through, and as its creation. We are vehicles for that very power. That's who we are. That's what gives us such power. Thank you for that song. It was beautiful. So, Reverend Debbie, last week, introduced this book. It's called The Goal Giver, and it's a book that talks about 5 stratospheric laws about how to live life. It's kind of it's a business parable, but also pertains to life in general. So today I'm going to be talking about the first and the second laws. I want to share something that Ernest Holmes said in his reader on practical wisdom. He said, "Life is an eternal givingness, the offering of the cosmic self to the joy of its own fulfillment." You know, we need to be that vehicle for God so it can experience joy through us. You and I are part of this joy, and we find fulfillment only as this joy passes through us to others. Everything moves in circles. We short-circuit our own good when we refuse to pass it on. So how important that circle is. So today we're going to start thinking about setting an intention regarding these 5 stratospheric laws for success. One of them is to live abundantly in all aspects of our life. Live abundantly. The other is to love abundantly in all ways, and a third is to have abundant joy through all our experiences. You know, what a nice intention to set. Set my intention to be joyful in all things. So a lot of people, when we talk about giving as a way to an abundant life, they kind of balk. And who wouldn't? I mean, you think about, you got a basket full of goods, right? You start giving those goods away, and you look at your basket, there's less in there. That's kind of the human way of thinking. And yet, when we use other things, like giving away ourselves, our helping other people, our joy, other things than just physical stuff. And I know for a fact this works, and it's a wonderful thing to know. And that is, and I'm just going to speak from first person, when I have been having a day where I'm a little low, maybe sitting on a pity pot a little bit, maybe feeling a little overwhelmed, maybe thinking, the joy is gone, and I'm feeling just a little dark cloud following me around like that. So I have learned that if I think to myself, and I can go to Spirit and say, show me, give me a little guidance of someone who would be uplifted by a phone call from me or a visit from me. Just guide me to that. I pick up the phone and call somebody that I think might need a little uplift, and guess what happens? Happens to me too. And this is the way life works. When our consciousness is raised in any respect, any area of our life, when our consciousness is raised, the consciousness of everything and everyone around us is raised. So when we raise the consciousness of that person, that other person that's having a bad day, guess what? It raises my consciousness too. So I know this idea of giving works. Holmes goes on to say this: unless the seed is sown, it cannot bear fruit. There must be a planting time for every harvest. Who gives all, receives all. Who refuses to give limits the possibility of greater good returning to him. Love and you will be loved. Extend joy and you will become more joyful. The ancient Talmud says, God will doubly guide the already guided. And Jesus, the greatest of the great, said, give and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That was one of D. Ray's favorite verses, along with Malachi 3:10. That's the one about bring your tithes to the warehouse, and you just try me and see if I will not shower down from you more good that you can possibly keep in your barns. This is the way it works. By giving, we get in return. We do not give because God needs the gift, but because the giving increases, broadens, and deepens the life of the giver. This is back to Ernest. Nor shall we give from the standpoint of duty. The universe refuses to bargain with us. It's already given us everything it has. But it has also provided that the gift of life can be received in its fullness only as it flows through us to the fullness of others. We've got to pass it on. It has to circulate. How wonderful is this exact balance which God and nature keep. How perfect is the law of God, and how glorious the opportunity to join with the infinite giver in the givingness of the self to the joy of life. So today we're going to talk about those first two laws, and then we're also going to talk about the idea of applying those two laws to our lives. So as we consider this, the first and second laws, we ask, what do you bring to the table? In this little book, The Go-Giver, great fortunes in the world have been created by men and women who have had a greater passion for what they were giving, their products, their services, or their ideas, than for what they're getting. That's kind of the first law. And for a lot of people, they just don't get it. They want to say something like this. They want to say to the fireplace, give me some heat, and then I'll put some logs on you. Or go to the bank and say, give me some interest, and then I'll make a deposit. And we all know that doesn't make any sense. It's obvious that doesn't make any sense. And yet, when it comes to our letting God into our abundant life and having its way in, through, and as us, we sometimes tune into our favorite internal radio station. It's called WIIFM. What's in it for me? Don't we all do that? Sometimes. So those who live an abundant life, they keep their focus on what they're giving. What value am I giving to the world, not on what they're going to get in return. And that's what creates their success. That's what this little book is all about. So the first law of stratospheric success, according to this book, your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. So why do we do this? It's our divine nature to do this. That divine, remember, we are a vehicle for that Creator, and that's part of that divine nature of our Creator, is to give. It's not a strategy, it's a way of life. So in this book, they give a restaurant as an example. What makes a good restaurant? Well, of course, the logical thing is good food. And yet it goes further than good food, doesn't it? A bad restaurant tries to give you just enough food and service, both in quality and quantity, to justify the money it takes from the customer. A good restaurant strives to give the most quantity and quality for the money it takes. But a great restaurant strives to defy the imagination. Its goal is to provide higher quality of food and service than any amount of money could possibly pay for. Now, a few Sundays ago, a group of us, Kevin went, I don't know who else went that day. We went to a restaurant. Yeah, Dee Dee went. And we went to this, it was an Indian restaurant near where I live. And Mary McNeil likes to go there, and she knows the menu, and she's been there a lot. So she was sort of our interpreter. She said, this is what that is. You might want that. That's going to be spicy. That's not too. She knew everything about it. Plus, she could understand the waiters who had these strong accents. I could not understand the waiter. You know it's a good place when the place is filled with the native people from that country, and it was. And all the people that were waiters and help there were Indians. And so it was challenging for me to understand them, but with Mary there, it really helped. And as a matter of fact, this one guy, isn't it interesting how when you can't understand them and then they want to make a joke? Do you ever notice that? It's sort of like, don't make jokes, I can't even understand you. But he was teasing Dee Dee that that the water she had was $2. And she's like, he had her going. But anyway, and the food was not cheap at all. I mean, it was relatively, I suppose, the normal going rates of a restaurant you go. Nice ambience. It wasn't like some of the places you go to, and they're very, very stark. This nice ambience. What was interesting is that everybody walked out of there with a doggy bag, because you get so much food, so you got some value. So you weren't paying for just one meal, you were probably paying for maybe 3 people if it was one person, because there was a lot of food there. Namaste is the name of the place. And they, to me, go beyond. That's a great restaurant where the food is good, the people are just wait on you, try to make you feel comfortable even if you can't understand. They're working hard at it. So, but that's what we're looking for, to go beyond be great, not just the minimum you have to do, go beyond that. So in this book it says that first law doesn't determine, it doesn't increase your abundance. It's not to increase your abundance. It determines your potential for success. And the second law determines how abundant you actually are. The second law says this: your abundance is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve. How many lives do you touch? I was talking to Leif Nestingen a couple weeks ago, and he said he volunteers at the Stillwater prison. And typically in our circles, we try to have somewhere around 12 to 15 people. It gets a little unwieldy if you get more than that in a circle. You don't get good discussion. So he says to me, he said, I had 30 people signed up for that class, for that circle. And he said, of course, 30 people don't show up, because in prison, oftentimes this unit gets locked down for something bad somebody did. That unit something comes up, and you don't get all those people. But how interesting that he had 30 people signed up, because if more than 15 start coming, if it's, let's say, 18, 20 people, I think it's time for us to thinking about, can we add an extra night, or can we get another room, something like that. So how many people can we touch? How many souls can we touch? I got a text from the woman at Wayside Treatment Center, Women's Treatment Center, and we had sent her a little flyer of what we present, because I told her, you got to let the women know what we're bringing so they show up when we show up. And so we sent her, Colleen Wilkinson made it up, and she sent it to her, and I get this text back. She says, oh, the counselors loved this idea of what you're going to bring. We're so excited. So we're slated to go there every other Tuesday from, like, I think 1:50 to 2:50 in the afternoon or something like that. So, and I've got about a half a dozen women who are kind of excited to get on that program. And how many lives can we touch? You know, that's what it's all about. How many people can we serve? Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. said, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. Everybody can live abundantly because anybody can give. So that's the first law. Your true ability to create an abundant life is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. And the second law is your abundance is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. Now, in this book, our hero is Joe, and he's got a quota to reach, short order. So he's got to get through these 5 laws really fast. He's got to learn fast. He's got to get some business under his belt to meet his quota. And so he meets this mentor named Pintar. And Pintar says, I will give you one of these laws every day, and I won't give you the other law until you have implemented that first law. You have to use it. You don't have to just memorize it, but you have to use it. So Joe goes back to his office, and he's trying to think how he implements this law of creating an abundant life, how much given value than in pay. And he doesn't have a clue. He's just floundering around, and he's on the phone. He's got this guy on the phone who could really make a difference in his quota. Could be it's a big accountant. If you got this order, would make a big difference. But the guy said to him, Joe, I'd like to give you the business, but you don't have anybody on your team who has international experience, and we need that. So Joe is so deflated, but before he hangs up, he remembers this law that he's supposed to give more in value than he would take in payment. And he says to the guy, he says, I keep a stack of cards of my competition just to remind me who I'm up against, who they are, what they offer. And he said, here's a guy that has international experience. I'm going to give you his name and number, send you to him. I think he might be your man. And the hair on my arm kind of goes up when who does that? That really is going beyond, what you're expected to do and giving value. And he was getting, particularly at that time, there was no payment. He was giving the business to somebody else. And then he's thinking about the second law. Of course, the second law is to who you can serve and how many people you can serve and how well you can serve them. And again, he's kind of wondering how he can do this. And then he remembers that when he dropped Pintar, his mentor, off at his office, that one of the women that he had met previously came running out of the office with this pound of coffee. Now, it's the best coffee he's ever tasted. Every time he goes in there, they give him a cup of this wonderful coffee. It's made perfectly. It's just perfect. He loves that coffee so much. It's really gourmet. This woman has a touch. So she gives him this bag of coffee. So he takes this coffee back to his office, and when he's thinking about how he can serve, he brews up a pot of this very good coffee, and he takes a cup of coffee to every single person in his office and serves them that coffee. And it felt good. It's something that he would have never thought of doing before. So he's starting to implement these laws. So the next thing we need to think about, how do we apply these laws? What can you do this week? We don't have to apply 5 of them this week, but think about applying 2. Do you give more in value than you receive? And how can you serve and how can you serve more people? So we've got all week to do this. He had 2 days. And by doing this, you can become a go-giver and prove your ability to live and to love and to laugh abundantly. So it is. And I'd like to close with a spiritual mind treatment. So if everybody would just get comfortable where they are, take a deep breath, get comfortable in your chair. I'm going to say this in first person, as though it's for me, and it is also for you. And I know there is but one power in the universe, and that power is all good. It is peace, it is love, it is abundance, it is order, it is balance. It has the perfect solution to any perceived challenge in my life. And I know I am one with it. That very power experiences life in, through, and as its creation, in, through, and as me. And even though in the past I might have had difficulty at times with the idea that it's good to remember that my true worth is determined by how much more I give in value than what I take in payment, and that my abundance is determined by how many people I serve and how well I serve them. So today I set an intention to be open to a way this week to give more value than I take in payment, and to focus on who and how I can serve. In gratitude for the law, that law that says it is done unto you as you believe, in gratitude for blessings of family and friends, and opportunities to allow Spirit to experience life in, through, and as me, in gratitude for remembering it is my divine right to live, love, and laugh abundantly. I release these words now and say, and so it is.